Hello, my name is Tim Turnus, and I am the Director of Programming in the St. John's Bible at the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library, more commonly known as Himmel. Himmel is located on the St. John's Abbey and University College campus in Collegeville, Minnesota. Like many of you, I find myself working from home these days due to COVID-19. And since I can't continue my programming around the country, I decided to put together a series of mini programs to share with you via Himmel at Home. The St. John's Bible, Ancient Methods, Modern Results, is a series of short talks which will take a look at the historical roots of the tools, methods, and materials used in the making of the St. John's Bible. Today's topic is an ancient mentor, the Winchester Bible. If you're unfamiliar with the St. John's Bible, you can learn more by visiting at the website shown on the screen in front of you. The St. John's Bible is a monumental work of art. It is a handwritten Bible of over 1,130 beautifully done pages. It was the idea of Donald Jackson, one of the foremost scribes in the Western world. He was the artistic director of the St. John's Bible, and he came up with the idea. It was his idea to make a monumental Bible that would be shared in a communal fashion and used in worship. But he wanted it to be a Bible for the 21st century that relied on the techniques and methods of its medieval predecessors. He had the idea, he needed support. In 1998, St. John's Abbey and University formally commissioned the handwriting of the Bible after 3 years of exploration and work. You can see here Brother Dietrich Reinhardt signing the actual commissioning document with his pen, and Donald Jackson signing his with his beautiful quill and elegant red ink. That kicked off the almost 14 years work for creating the pages of the St. John's Bible. Donald Jackson had the idea, and he now had a commissioner. But what he didn't have was time. He didn't have time to do it by himself. So he had to put together a team that would work together for 15 years to create this one work of art. And you see here the photograph of the scribes, the artists, the support people, the people who brought this project to life and worked together on this single commission. Of this team of 23 people, 7 of them were calligraphers. These people worked on the lettering that beautifully decorates each page. Donald Jackson, the artistic director of the St. John's Bible, Izzy Pludwinski, who did all of the Hebrew lettering in the St. John's Bible. He was our sofer. And then we have Sue Houghton, Angela Swan, Sally Mae Joseph, Susie Leeper, and Brian Simpson. These people, along with Donald Jackson, served as the principal scribes for all of the black lettering that fill almost the entire project. 1,130 plus pages of elegant black lettering. So you have the idea, you have the commissioner, and you now have the scribes with their talent. What's missing? Well, just like in the medieval period, you have all those same things. Here you see our famous scribe, Jean Mirlot. He is sitting in his studio, his scriptorium, with his inks down here, his hand-cut quill, his page of parchment. But what else does he have? He has up here his exemplar. You have to remember that a scribe doesn't author. A scribe copies. A scribe needs a text to write, and it was the exact same for the St. John's Bible scribe. They needed a text to write. St. John's Abbey and University wanted to make a Bible for the 21st century. Therefore, they wanted a Bible that would be in English. So they chose to go with the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible. Now, this became the text that the scribes would copy on the pages. And they chose the NRSV because it was a literal translation, it was a scholarly translation, it was an inclusive translation, but more importantly for this project with its communal nature, it was a translation of the Bible in English that was accepted and used by almost every major Christian church in the world. It's become the perfect translation of the Bible for us. And it is the entire Bible we wrote, both Old and New Testament, including the apocryphal books that some traditions used. Now, when Donald Jackson sat down to begin this project, he had to work closely with the parameters set by the NRSV committee regarding the layout of the words. And the thing that was a challenge for him was that the parameters for the NRSV, for the layouts, were solely designed for printed editions in mind. They would never, ever were done with the idea of it being handwritten. And as Donald looked at the many versions that were printed of the NRSV, he described them as being anti-aesthetic. He said they almost took pride in their anti-aestheticness and their ugliness. The printed books, he said, had a self-congratulatory ugliness that wasn't even present in the early days of printing. If you think about it, the early pages, the earliest printed works we have, of course, the Gutenberg Bible, and here is the Library of Congress's copy of the Gutenberg Bible, or here is a folio from our own university collection owned by the College of St. Benedict. These layouts were done on the shoulders of the handmade volumes before them. They were still beautiful. They still had a presence. They had a grace that befitted the pages and befitted the words. And in fact, they even left space to do some hand lettering. Right here, you can see these are hand lettered pieces in the midst of this printed, mechanically printed text, because they were in that transition period from written works to printed works. Well, today, all the NRSV layouts, in fact, all the layouts that you see in printed books are utilitarian. And Donald wanted an aesthetic that was goodly, as he described it, or therefore godly. So he had to go back in time. He wanted to look at the medieval predecessors, and even before the medieval books. He wanted to go back in time and look at traditions of earlier works for inspiration. But only a very few could serve as guidelines for that. The earliest ones, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, wouldn't work. Number one, they're in a completely different format. The St. John's Bible is a codex, the format of a book like we think of today, bound pages between two covers. The Dead Sea Scrolls are scrolls, and they're actually in a different language altogether. The St. John's Bible is in English. The Dead Sea Scrolls are in Hebrew. They could not serve as this, and it's also only in fragments. And others were not even in the same scale as the St. John's Bible. The Stonyhurst Gospel, or known today as the St. Cuthbert Gospel, is the oldest surviving intact European book from the 8th century. It's in its original binding, and it's got its complete text, but it was designed to be a personal book. It's not even the whole Bible, it's just the Gospels, but it's very personal in nature. Everything about this is designed to hold in the hand. Donald was going for this monumental scale. So Donald needed a complete Bible. He needed a pandect, a complete work. And those aren't even that common. The Bible as we know it today didn't exist in its full version many ages ago. So he had a hard time finding examples. There was Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Alexandrinus, those types of things. They were very square and squat and fat. And Donald wanted a monumental scale that invited people in. And the St. John's Bible was meant to be communal. So he went off to the British Library and he discovered and looked at several books. One of them that he looked at was the Granville Bible. It was made in the 800s and it had that nice scale of text. Its pages were not huge. They were about 20 inches tall by about 15 inches wide. But one thing is they had columns of text laid out next to full page illuminations. And as Donald looked at this beautiful Carolinian script, you can see here a close-up of the script here. He loved how readable it was, and he liked how the columns on the page, but one thing that struck him was the vellum. The vellum itself, and you can see here over here, the calf skin, or the skin, it is very pristine, he said, for a book of this age. It was also incredibly thin. Now, the Granville Bible is a single volume Bible, and so to make it a single volume, the vellum had to be thin and very delicate. And what struck him with this is how distracting the show-through was. You see this letter here? This is the obverse side of that other page. This letter showed through. The skin was so thin that it was almost like a tissue paper. And it was from this experience of turning the pages and looking at the Granville Bible that he said, the St. John's Bible can't be one volume because it needs to have vellum that has weight to it. And this is what led Donald to his multi-volume vision. As Donald looked at the St. John's Bible and the Granville Bible, he soon came to realize that he wanted St. John's Bible to be like a series of peacocks all opening up. And he envisioned these beautiful pages opening up in front. And that's how he came up with this idea of a multi-volume Bible with vellum thick enough so you would have some show through, but also be able to hold the weight of the artworks and lettering that was going to decorate each page. And there we ended up with the 7-volume vision for the St. John's Bible, which actually worked perfectly with St. John's vision because 7 is a theological number and it fits the tradition of the breakdown of the Bible. You can see here the volumes of the St. John's Bible. This one might not be pulled out in your tradition. Quite often Psalms is part of the wisdom books, but the Psalms are so frequently used that they put them in their own volume known as a Psalter. So Donald now had his vision, and he still wanted to find a medieval mentor, a book from the Middle Ages that kind of embodied this. And so Donald found himself leaving the British Library and going off to Winchester Cathedral in Winchester, United Kingdom. And there he encountered or found the Winchester Bible. Now, the Winchester Bible best embodied what Donald was looking for in a Bible like this. It was made at the high point of 12th century Bibles. Like the St. John's Bible, it was made for a monastic community. And it's been at Winchester Cathedral since it was almost through its entire life. It was made there and it stayed there except for during the English Civil War, and then again during World War II, it was removed for safety. It is a large manuscript. This is not the greatest picture, but you can see the hands next to it to kind of show the scale. Its pages are approximately 23 inches tall and 14 3/4 wide, having that nice scale to it. It was written by a single scribe. However, there are some corrections and stuff done by a different hand. And as you can see here with this letter, it is lavishly and beautifully illustrated in color and gold. What's also unique about the Winchester Bible is that it's not finished. Many of the artworks that were meant to be finished are only in process. Some have just the gold laid on it with their stenciling ready to, or their outlines ready for the color to be put in. Some have just the touches of the gesso and things ready to be laid, but the gold is not on there. And then some, of course, are completely finished in their brilliance as well. This is wonderful because it's given scholars and researchers kind of insights into how these processes were done and in what order the works were carried out. What's unique about this as well is that the Winchester Bible is almost completely intact. There are a few leaves that have been missing over the years, stolen by thieves and so on. You can find one at the Pierpont Morgan Library in New York City. It is a multi-volume work. When it was made originally, it was 2 volumes. Then in the 1800s, it was rebound into 3 volumes. And then in 1948, it was bound into its current 4 volumes. So here we're getting closer to that multi-volume vision that Donald has of a monumental work. Remember, 23 inches tall by 14, almost 15 inches wide. So this book is almost 2 feet by 3 feet wide when it's opened. It has that monumental nature. And what Donald loved when he started looking at this is how the words rested on the page. The dark, dense lettering in a transitional hand also drew Donald's attention to it. It's kind of a mix of Caroline's, a minuscule and Gothic script. The 2 columns of text on each page, each with 54 lines per column, and they ended up providing a strong grid to stand up to the artworks that the Winchester Bible has all the way through it over here. It also allowed the pages to rest or the words to rest and float within these margins. And the margins in white space allowed the text to have presence. Now, Donald measured and analyzed and tried to figure out the formula that gave this visual harmony to the Winchester Bible pages. And he soon realized there really isn't any formula, because this was created by an artist who didn't follow a formula, but who created a visual harmony simply by practice. And that's why it looked so right. And that was what inspired Donald when he started laying out the pages of the St. John's Bible. And if you look at a page of the St. John's Bible next to the Winchester Bible, you can see the influence. You can see the mentorship that Donald received from this. Like the Winchester Bible, the lettering has presence on the page. Now, Donald just couldn't copy the Winchester Bible. He couldn't just copy the format. Again, it wouldn't work. It would be antiquarian in its nature. It's not a Bible for our time. It was a Bible for that time. And you also have to realize that the layout wouldn't work. Donald's artworks are more fluid. than those in the rigid ones in the Winchester Bible. And as you look at the pages, as you look at the script for the St. John's Bible is very different than the Latin. Latin has a much cleaner, clearer space between the lines. The English text kind of bounces into, look at here where you have the lettering, the suffered and the mocking and the flogging. All of this kind of comes in the middle of that white space. And so you needed to find a way to lay this out that created visual harmony across every page, but using that kind of inspiration of the Winchester Bible. And here you see 3 different pages all laid out with their columns of text. To get that feeling, to get that strength, Donald then took that inspiration and hired a graphic designer to lay out every letter using a font that would be about the size of the script used in the St. John's Bible. You can see here Vin Gaudier working on the computer. I love this image because it shows you how long ago this was. Look at that computer. Using the computer to do the layouts allowed them to leave space for full page, half page, quarter, third page illuminations. It also allowed, most importantly, for them to space the columns out using the text of the NRSV, space the letters out, and figure out the first and last word of every page. That's important because you had 6 principal calligraphers working on that. By knowing the first and last word of every page, they could all write at the same time. Once the layouts were complete from the computer, then they made printouts. And if you look up here at the top of this page here of the screen, you can see this computer-generated font, which is the copy layout sheet that the scribe will take his or her text from. This sheet up at the top told the scribe what had to fall on this skin. This is a great image because look, this is a mechanical font. This here is the written hand, the script done by the scribe, one of the scribes for the St. John's Bible. Look at the consistency that that scribe creates. These printed layout sheets told the scribe what had to fall on that page, and it also gave the scribe some hints as to some trouble spots. If you look carefully, you'll see some lines are written in green. These lines indicated for the scribe that that line was going to be tough to justify left and right. There may be too few letters, too many letters, something like that. Because you'll notice the computer did not justify left and right, but the scribe made both sides of the column straight and balanced by hand. That's pretty incredible when you take a look at that all the way through. They also then were able to take those layout sheets, put them on the wall, kind of get a sense of the progress. You can see here how they crossed them out as they finished the project, and allow them to step back and look at the whole thing and say, ah, look what we've done. In the end, they get beautiful, consistent pages of script written by 6 different calligraphers. And then Izzy would come in here and he would add the Hebrew script at the end. These beautiful pages of script just go on page after page after page. And what we ended up with is a balance very similar to that of the Winchester Bible. Solid columns of text. Donald, throughout his practice and his exploring, ended up with 54 lines in one column, just like the Winchester Bible. A balance of space around each of these so that these columns create a grid to stand up next to beautiful artworks, full page artworks like you see here from Job, or our Kings where the art kind of takes over into the column of the writing. Or here, the Christ our light, in which you've got this very strong, powerful, dark image, and then you balance it out with dark lettering for an incipit transitioning into the text. And you can still see here, he did have some show through. Our vellum is not so thick that you can't see through it, but it doesn't distract it as it did in the Granville Bible. And then you've got artworks that spread across over pages as well. The St. John's Bible, like its medieval mentor, the Winchester Bible, ended up with a beautiful visual harmony that only comes from the knowledge of the artist playing with the script, playing with the layout, and figuring out how it goes. And in the end, like the Winchester Bible, the St. John's Bible becomes a communal work that people can gather around, discuss, point at, handle. It's not meant to be a private, personal book. It's meant to be a communal work that invites people of all traditions together. Because in the end, no matter how wonderful the materials, how important the letters, it's the artist, it's the scribe that makes each page a work of art. And whether it be a page filled with elegant illuminations or just consistent, very elegant black lettering, all pages in the St. John's Bible are works of art. And it owes a lot of its characteristics to its medieval mentors and the scribes and artists that came before. You can learn more about the St. John's Bible by visiting our website. If you'd like to learn about the preservation of manuscripts that Himmel does around the world, please visit www.hmml.org and consider becoming one of our donors. Thank you.